This is exactly 9 in the morning in Geneva and a bit later in Asia and the Pacifics, but I think we are ready to jump into this exciting first session of the Decent Work Brighter Futures, a regional intergenerational dialogue in celebration of 20 years of the ILO's Global Employment Trends for Youth. It's great to see already many people joining. I think we'll get even more as we wait, as we get through this introduction. I'm Sara Elder, the head of the Employment Analysis and Economic Policies units at the ILO in Geneva, and one of the authors of the latest Global Employment Trends for Youth reports, and the author of many of the previous versions of the reports. I've been doing this for quite a long time now. And let me give you some quick housekeeping reminders before we jump into the content. First, to remind you that you are being recorded and that the recording will be available later on the YouthForesight event page, which I think my colleagues will put in the chat. And second, to let you know that your mics are automatically muted if, when we get to the interactive session and you want to speak, raise your hand and we will be very happy to unmute your microphone. So let me now tell you why we're here, why we're gathered together in this intergenerational dialogue. So this is an experiment for us. Basically, we want to do some reality checks on the assumptions that we make when we write these trends reports. And we've been putting these out for 20 years now, since 2004. We feel we do a pretty good job at sharing the latest trends in youth employment, but sometimes it's hard for us to visualize the humanity behind the numbers. And we want to hear more from young people about whether or not we're presenting their challenges in a real light. So we consider this a kind of reality check. And at the same time, we thought it would be fun to investigate through real voices what has changed over the past 20 years in terms of how young people experience their labor market transitions, their labor market entry, their first foray into young adulthood. So we thought we would battle it out over the generations and try to understand a bit which generation feels they have more privileges, and we'll put all of our intergenerational stereotypes on the floor. So we hope we can have some fun with this. So to get us there, we're bringing together a representative of Gen Z, meaning a young adult who is around the ages of 25 to 29. We're not too strict about that, but a person who we know is just starting out on their career pathway. And we have as well a representative of Gen X, who was a young adult around 20 years ago, and experiencing their years of transition around the time that the first Global Employment Trends for Youth came out. So I'll introduce our panelists in a moment. They're so brave. I really feel that you are so brave for joining us, and there's no pressure at all at representing an entire generation, right? Yeah, I'm sure you'll do spectacular. Of course, we've tried to narrow down the context a little bit by focusing on one region at a time, Asia and the Pacific, but we know the experience of our Gen Xer who grew up in Australia will be extremely different than our Gen Zer who grew up in Indonesia. There's no getting the context completely the same. Also, of course, the context that you have as a characteristic of your household, a characteristic of your wealth, it will be completely different. But we're never going to be able to compare oranges and oranges. So we just stick with the regional approach, and we'll have some fun with that. Now, I'm going to moderate the dialogue between our two speakers, but of course we want to hear from you all in the audience as well, regardless of your generation. And we'll be running several polls throughout the talk, where you can express your own views and opinions. And then later on, you're always, throughout the course of the session, free to use the chat to make comments, to ask questions. And then, as I said, at the end, we'll have some time for interaction, and you can raise your hand and discuss with us about your own experiences. The agenda that follows is, after this introduction, I'll spend a few moments on presenting the main trends from the recent report for youth employment in the region of Asia and the Pacific. Then we'll start the intergenerational dialogue, and then we'll finish with the interaction. Now, to make it a little fun and to see who's with us, we're going to start a quick poll to just see who's in the room. And we do this through the Mentimeter, and my genius tech colleagues behind the scenes will be putting up a QR code that you can all please scan to enter into the Menti code and identify what is your generation. We want to see who is in the room with us. So here it comes. All right, so we'll give you a moment to scan the code. So that you know for the future, you can use the same code to enter anytime we ask a poll. We'll put it up every time we get to one of our polls, and you can re-enter. Otherwise, you can stay in, and the poll will walk you through the pages. Okay. Shall we move to the question? Okay. So here is your chance to let us know which gen you represent. I am not putting myself into the poll, but I am a full and firm Gen Xer. Okay, it's nice. We even have some boomers represented. Okay, we'll give it another few seconds. I see we don't have as answers are still coming in. Oh, isn't that interesting? So we have more representatives of the millennials than the Gen Zers, but great. Okay, great. So that's to kind of get you comfortable using the polls, and we'll be doing more of those throughout the session. But this one was just to give us a little bit of flavor for who's in the room. So maybe now we move to the next portion of the discussion, where I will present some of the latest findings of the Global Employment Trends for Youth. And we have a few slides to get through. Now, I'm going to move quickly because I want the bulk of this session to be about the dialogue. But still, to set the scene, bear with me and allow me to present a few of the latest findings. Also because they'll form the basis of the discussion. Remember, I said at the beginning, we want this to be a reality check. So we'll present the very generalized themes of what's happening in Asia and the Pacific for young people today. And you can tell me whether or not that sits well with your own personal experience. So next slide, please. Here you can scan QR codes if you're tech able, and get yourself to the page where you'll find the main reports. We also did regional focuses, so you'll see also the code for the regional focus report on Asia and the Pacific. We have the other regions there as well. Next slide. So let's get started with some of the main findings. Next one, please. First, we start with the global youth unemployment rate. Go ahead, please. First, in Asia and the Pacific, the rate in 2024 was 13.7%, which puts us fully in the category of recovery from the COVID-19 crisis. So this is below the rate in 2019 before the crisis started. And we can say that the harsh realities of the young person trying to find work during the peak of the COVID period is now behind us. So that this is positive news. But I say it's mostly positive news because we have to acknowledge that the recovery has not been universal or even. Go ahead, please. You see in some of the subregions, the unemployment rate in 2014 remained elevated over the 2019 rates. And this in the subregions of Asia and the Pacific, happened in East Asia, and slightly elevated still in Southeast Asia and the Pacific. When it comes to young women, unfortunately, here we have another story that's not quite so positive, because the unemployment rate of women remains above what it was in 2019, while the unemployment rate of young men is now fully recovered. And this is quite unfortunate. What we found during the peak of the crisis was that both young men and young women fell out of the labor market, either due to unemployment or inactivity. A lot of young people hid out in the education system, but young women were more likely to fall out of the labor market than young men, and they're finding it more difficult to re-enter. So this is what these statistics show us. Next slide, please. And then, of course, we have this youth NEET rate. This is the share of young people who are not in employment, education, or training. And this is a much higher rate than the youth unemployment rate, always. So we have in the Asia Pacific region still 20% of young people who are neither in employment, education, or training. And again, this is very much a gender storyline, because we have 2 and 3 young NEETs across the globe, and also in Asia and the Pacific, that are young women. And this rate is particularly high amongst young women in the South Asia region. Next. So because this was a 20th year anniversary for the Global Employment Trends for Youth, we wanted to take a longer term look at what's happened over the past 20 years to see if we can identify some changes in opportunities. And what we find, unfortunately, is probably we haven't seen quite as much positive change as we might like. And we still have a great deal of difficulty for young people when it comes to accessing decent jobs. And if anything, we find that the inequalities of opportunities have gotten worse. Today, only 1 in 4 young workers in a low-income country manages to find a regular, secure job, compared to 3/4 of young workers in a high-income country. And if we consider decent work to be one that brings young person a good income, it brings them the confidence and security from which they can grow and move into that next stage of adulthood and financial independence from your parents, we have to sadly admit that we're probably not doing very well. We're not where we should be. Next slide, please. Now, some of the reasons for this lack of ability to transform our societies into ones that create decent jobs for all young people has to do with the structural, the structure of the economies and where jobs are being created. So you'll see in this picture that the bulk of job creation in Asia and the Pacific remains in what we call the traditional services sector. So these are jobs that relate to trade, transport, accommodations, food services. Another big bulk of job creation remains in the non-manufacturing industry, primarily the construction sector. We know jobs here are hard, they're not well remunerated. So this is still our picture. Now, what about the modern sector where an educated young person might expect to find work? Here, you'll see it in the realm of communications, finance, and professional services. You'll see that there has been growth in this sector. There has been an increasing number of young people getting jobs there. Also in manufacturing, with the exception of East Asia. But it's a small portion of where the jobs are overall. And the reason this is important, next slide please, is because that's, as I said earlier, where the educated young people will hope to end up. most of the educated young people will hope to have a modern sector job, probably sitting behind a desk, looking at a computer. It's a very service-oriented knowledge sector industry, but we know that the economy is such that it's not growing these jobs at the same pace as young people are now emerging from the education system. So we have this frustration of the educated young person who has to either sit out in unemployment for a long period, competing amongst their peers for those few available good jobs, or they have another option, which is to take a job that doesn't necessarily meet their expectations, for which they are overeducated. And this is the reality, I think, across a lot of Asian economies, particularly those that are now in the middle income status. Next slide, please. So, of course, the main report goes into a lot more details on the trends. This is just a really quick picture, but I think maybe some of the negative storylines feed into this picture that young people today are typically quite anxious, and they have a lot on their shoulders. And this anxiety shows up in the report. We make use of a lot of perception surveys, including the World Values surveys. And here they do confirm that even if we've recovered, fewer young people are in unemployment, young people are still very worried about losing their job. There's also some statistics that show that go beyond the labor markets, and young people in Asia and the Pacific are concerned with issues like climate change. You are concerned by issues of conflict and your proximity to conflict. And you're generally worried about your future. And this is what we as workers in the realm of international service need to combat. So what can we do to continue to give people hope, young people hope about their futures? Next slide, please. All right. I think that's got us. I think we're through it. We're through it. Now we can get forward to the more fun part. Thank you for bearing with me on the main trends. And yeah, I'd like to hear from you in the chat if you feel like we're telling the story right about young people. And of course, we'll hear from our panelists now. And I have the honor of welcoming our guests. We have Sintya, a very, very warm welcome. I hope that you're comfortable on your couches and joining me in the room now. Let me give a shout out to our behind the scenes geniuses, Joanna and Gladys, who put together the design and are making sure that everything's functioning behind the scenes. I'm loving my couch. It's very comfortable. And now we have me and Sintya with us. Let me start with me, who's a dear friend of mine, who's representing our Gen X. So my own generation, and me has a fascinating background, a wealth of knowledge to share with us. And me currently heads the EU-funded Ship to Shore program. It's led by the ILO and jointly implemented by IOM and UNDP. Before joining the ILO in 2017, she lectured in law. She worked with refugees. She litigated human rights issues in some of the remotest places in the world. And she holds a PhD on the links between music and literature. She can teach us yoga. I mean, it's really a lot, me. You're putting us to shame. So next, we have our Gen Z representative. We are very pleased to have with us Ni Putu Sintya Dewi, who goes by Sintya. Thank you for making it easier for us, Sintya. So Sintya embeds all of the characteristics of a young leader. She feels passionate about issues of community, empowerment, and social justice, and I love that. Sintya is based in Indonesia. She's founded her own organization called Rasa Bali, and she serves as an activity manager at Kaura, Bali, which is a community-led retreat facility. I understand. Sintya comes recommended to us as a speaker by Plan Indonesia, and I'd like to thank Plan Indonesia for this recommendation because Sintya was an alumni of their Ready to Work program. All right, let's get started. I'm going to start and throw out the first question to me, and it's the general question, me. So please tell us your story, right? I presume that around 20 years ago, you were in your fledgling years of labor market entry. And I know you won't be able to go through everything in your fascinating background, but please, can you give us a few highlights about what your school to work entry looked like?
Sure. Thanks for inviting me on this panel. So yeah, 20 years ago, I started my PhD, and I actually felt ancient at the time because I started after a career break. So I'd worked for a couple of years. I did my first degrees in Australia, where I studied law and arts simultaneously, and then did a master's in international relations. I worked for a corporate law firm for a couple of years, and that was really my first real professional job. I left that job and went into sort of an international life, worked for an NGO in Egypt at the time, and then decided to do a PhD, partly because I was funded for it and I felt like it was too good opportunity to pass up. So after the PhD, well, while doing the PhD, I did a lot of consultancies with NGOs in some interesting places, including Kosovo, South Africa, and other places. And then when I finished the PhD, which was in literature and music, I was very lucky to get a postdoc job in London looking at basic ethnic political conflict in the Balkans. Did that for 2 years. I really missed the field. I missed being out in the field rather than sort of doing research. I also decided that the academic life wasn't really for me. So I was working for UNHCR in Pakistan for a couple of years, and then from there went back into academia briefly, and then spun out again and joined the ILO. So it's been a very untraditional journey, I think, and that's partly also because I really wanted to use jobs as a way to get an interesting life. I wanted to use my career as a gateway to sort of step outside my comfort zone and try to do different things and to try to travel and see the world. So that's basically what I tried to do.
It's really amazing me. And then we just asked because I'm wondering if the economy was more or less flourishing at this moment. Do you think that helped your ability to jump around because you knew that there would be opportunities when whichever door you wanted to open?
So I sort of came onto the job market just around the year 2000 crash. There was like the big .com crash at the time, and actually really changed expectations because I think there was a whole push, particularly if you were doing a law degree, to move into sort of fintech. And that was seen as very safe. And when the .com crash kind of happened, I actually did a summer clerkship at a management consulting firm, partly because I just wanted to prove that I could do it and annoy people who thought they were entitled to the job. And then but actually, as that happened, those jobs started to close their doors because the .com crash happened and the gig was no longer so attractive. So that actually moved me into other places. And, I was very unsure about what I wanted to do. So it wasn't as rosy as I think we might think now. There were, troughs and peaks as well.
Indeed. Okay. One last follow-up. Just I'm very curious. Were your parents behind you? Did they support your exploration?
So I'm a migrant child. I went to Australia when I was 11 from China. And my parents were first generation migrants and their priority really is for stability, security, and safety. That is not what I chose. So they were very confused by much of these decisions.
Yeah, that's a typical story. You have to, well, and then of course it depends on whether or not we follow our parents' expectations or we push against it. So thank you, me. I'm going to turn now to Sintya. And Sintya, we're going to ask the same general question. If you could please tell us a bit about your current pathway. Maybe tell us what you did in school and how you thought about how you're going to enter the labor market and where you are now.
Yes, thank you, Sarah. And I really resonate with what Mi has shared because somehow I felt that my story with me are quite similar in a different period of time. When she mentioned about trying to escape from traditional way of seeing works or pursue her dreams, I also somehow felt the same. And I also start my career in a very unsafe time. I started my first career when during COVID-19 on 2020.
Oh, wow.
Actually.
Wow.
Yeah. So I think I will start with my story when I took my bachelor degree in accounting. I start my first career working as a teacher in a learning center in Bali. And that path, it's surprisingly, and people around me just like freak out. And I often got questioned, like, why you choose such a different field? Like you studying accounting, but now you working as a teacher in the learning center with the kids. And on that time, I just feel like I want to merge the knowledge that I gained in university and my passion with education. And then, yes, during that time, I received a lot of support from the people that I could call the mentors. And they really play a pivotal role in that path. And eventually, I lead the program, and we call it Future Food, where we combine the spirit of entrepreneurship and also we do kind of innovation in the food with the kids. Right. And then I also feel like I here where I am now because I also able to explore places and had the chance to meet quite a lot of people that inspiring, and that helped me to kind of uh, you know shape my perspective in the way I'm seeing the world, and also inspire me to pursue my dreams. And yes, because I'm Gen Z, I have to say thanks to the technology, because technology also play some of the very important part in my life. Because with that, I'm allowed to study and working at the same time. Yeah. And
so did you do some digital work?
Yes. So I took the online classes in university, so that's why I'm able to working as a teacher in the learning center on that time. Also on that helped me to lead me to get where I'm now, where I'm working in the community. And when I'm started moving to East Bali, to the rural community, I find it something different, a huge difference. I believe that all of Gen Z are grown up with the technology, because when I'm growing up, most of the part in my life are somehow intertwined with technology. And then here, that changed my perspective a lot. And I realized that the community here, especially the young people, the students, have limited awareness of technology. They only knew technology they can use for social media and communicate with their friends. But beyond that, they're not really aware. For example, for me, I use platform like LinkedIn to build up my career and get connection and networking. But people here, they not even heard of LinkedIn. They don't even know what is LinkedIn. And then when I'm asked them, so how would you pursue your job or applying for internship program? And they all said, oh, we only relying on the letter that companies shared to our community leader, or we just come to the company straight away and asking if the opportunity is available. And that fact, it's like shocked me. And I realized that, oh my word, the gap in access, resources, and awareness is really significant. And yeah, it just feel like on that time when I heard that, I feel, is it our shared responsibility? And somehow we just work together to ensure everyone, regardless their location, has the same access and resources so they can pursue their dreams.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
That's really beautiful, Cynthia. And I really feel that no, you've been very brave. You followed you ran away from the safe path. Both of you. You're right. So I see the connection. You ran away from the safe path of accounting where you guaranteed a job and you followed your passion. And then your transition is one interest opens the door to the next interest, and you see the need, and that's I think it's very beautiful. I also really appreciate your comments about the capacity that technology has had to be an equalizer, but it's only going to be an equalizer if people understand it and know how to use it. And
Yeah.
I understand that you now want to give back and make sure that others have the same knowledge and awareness as you. So that's beautiful. All right, so Cynthia, I'm going to throw another question to you, and this one is a little bit about your expectations. We assume, well, I'm already challenging what my assumptions were, that young people today want security. So what is the characteristics of a job that matter most to you when you're thinking about that dream job? Is it the purpose of the job? Is it the wage? Is it the benefits that come with it? Is it the match to your education? Any of the above. Tell us what you feel would be the perfect match for you.
Yeah. Of course, it's not matched to my education, but somehow it's intertwined and connects. But for me, I really like the positive, supportive working environment. And also, I got the sense, like really strong sense of the purpose. It's like, you love what you are doing. And when you do that, your working place are safe for you to learn and grow in a personal and professional level. And I feel like when those elements are aligned, my creativity and productivity just come more naturally. And that make me feel the job that I'm doing actually fulfilling to myself.
Yeah.
And yeah,
So
but
it's the community of the workplace is important.
yes,
Right?
yes.
Yeah, that's
And
wonderful.
as a Gen Z, I have heard a lot of time, even my people have shared to me that some people somehow label us becoming too idealistic, or we somehow said we are too picky in pursuing our job. And if it resonates to you and you have experienced that before, I encourage you to click the emoji and then share it to this room.
Yeah.
But and to answer that, or like to respond that, I feel like because we are growing up and also living in a different way. And like me growing up in a time that digital transformation are somehow intertwined and definitely shape us. And also with the easy access to get information, we somehow become more aware, like to global issues, and also like new trend. And people are freaked out that we can see different approach to doing thing and work. And
Yeah.
that's, I think sometimes it scared our other generation because we just being different in the way we are doing.
Very
Uh,
true.
but
Yeah.
that lead us sometime we can challenge and question the status quo. And uh, yeah, we're trying to seek the opportunity, the job that we feel we are believe that is possible to do.
Beautiful. Thank you,
Yeah.
Cynthia. So this intergenerational workplace is becoming a hot topic, and because the old
Yeah.
people are having to stay in the labor market longer, young people are coming in. We do tend to have different experiences, and can we speak the same language and work together? I hope that we can. I feel that we can. We can learn so much from Gen Setters and beyond, and but we have to be open to it. And not be the grumpy old timers that sometimes we can be. Now, over to back to my old grumpy old timer. Me, again, putting on your hat of 20 years ago. What was it that you were looking for? I mean, it looks like you didn't find it. You hopped around, but what was it that you were mainly looking for?
I looked for different things at different times, right? My very first sort of corporate law job was really big. It was a very sort of transactional, calculated job. I knew I wasn't going to stay long, but being at a top tier corporate law firm in Australia at the time meant that I was paid to work and study at the same time. I was able to complete the vocational training you needed to register as a solicitor in Australia within the framework of the corporate law firm. I got the experience. I did rotations and did different sort of, banking and finance law, mergers and acquisitions, professional negligence litigation, all sorts of things. So I got that exposure and I was reasonably well paid, which was important to me at the time. It's still important to me, actually. But, I've taken jobs that had meant a pay cut at various times because I wanted to do something different. And when I left corporate law to go work for an NGO in, Egypt, obviously that was an enormous pay cut. But I also knew that, what I didn't want, and I saw a lot of my peers doing, was everybody sort of said, oh, I'm going to do corporate law for a while and I'm going to do something more interesting. But you very quickly get used to the income, the lifestyle, the acquisitional sort of capitalist culture we all live in. And so I gave myself a deadline and I got out sort of much to the surprise, I think, of a lot of people. And left and sort of started something else. So that, so the first job was very different. And then when I looked in other times in my life, I was looking for, maybe a transition to a different sector, sometimes I looked for stability, sometimes I looked to a venture. But all of the work I've done is, mostly sort of public service law in one way or another, or research in one way or another. And that's really being sort of the consistent thread, I think.
And even process-wise, how did you hop around? Did we have internet at that time? So you were able to look for jobs?
So we're the transitional generation, right? I remember doing research at a library, going to indexes and references, all of this. But by the time, I finished law school or finished my undergrad, internet was much more common. So, that was a lot more common. But most of my hops were, I ended up in Egypt literally because I had one random conversation with somebody who told me about the NGO and I looked them up. I ended up in UK because I was, again, I kind of wanted to see if I could get into Cambridge. I wanted to see if I could get funded. And so that was a bit of a just let's see how it goes. I knew that the degree may not directly lead to increased income, but I wanted that experience. And then, so at each different step, then from a PhD, it was sort of the natural progression to get to a postgrad. And from Egypt, I knew somebody who told me about an NGO in South Africa, so that's why I went to them. In Cambridge, I met somebody who had connections to the NGO in Kosovo, so I was there. So it wasn't really internet. I never used LinkedIn to find a job. I'm on LinkedIn, but I am very, very quiet on LinkedIn. It's always been people I've met, stories I've heard, and I've sort of followed up on those. But I've never really got a job through LinkedIn.
Okay, great, fair. All right, we want to hear a bit from the audience. So now we're going to throw up a poll and see what our audience's expectations were when they were starting out in the labor markets. So you can either connect to the same poll that you're already connected to, and you'll see the first question there. Otherwise, we'll put up the QR code again. Now, this will take you to a first filter question, which is about your age range. And the reason we do this is we want to see if the generations respond differently. Probably you won't, but let's, as I say, this whole conversation is an experiment. Let's see what we get. So in a moment, you'll come to the question about your age. And then you'll come to a question about, what were the characteristics of the job that you were aiming for? Unfortunately, we were only able to give you one option. So you can only choose one when you come to the next screen. Probably you had many ideal characteristics of the job in mind, but you'll have to pick the one that resonates most with you. All right, so we're heavier on the Gen Xer. We're an old audience. Let's move ahead since we're running low on time. All right. So the question is, what characteristics of your career jobs matter or mattered if you're done with your transition most to you when you were starting your career journey? Okay. Pink are the 30 years and above, and blue are the below 30. Not seeing much difference. Of course, we are heavier on the Gen Xers than the Gen Zers, but all right, very interesting. So we will take these results and throw them together with those that we receive in future dialogues and try to come up with some conclusions. But what I'm seeing right now is that what matters most, of course, is the career growth opportunities. I think that resonates a bit with what Sintya said, the community and whether or not you feel that there's a pathway in the job that you're doing. And of course, even stronger, having interesting work that makes you feel engaged and engaging for you, and supporting a social cause. That's also something that we come to. Sorry, the red are those who came in late and didn't identify their age, didn't have time to identify their age. And then we have some traditional ones who are looking for the wage. And as me said, wage is also important, equally important. All right, let's move on. I said we're running a little bit low on time, but hopefully we'll catch up. So next, another question for you, Sintya. And this one is more about your concerns and the obstacles that you face. And speaking more for those young people around you, what do you feel are some of the blockages for young people's access to decent jobs in your own current geopolitical setting? And do you feel some young people in your country are disadvantaged in overcoming the situation?
Oh, sorry, I thought.
Yeah.
When I'm living in a city in the urban area, I think the blocks that I see, it's only like a lot of demand, but the supply is low. And then it's make my friends who even have the bachelor degree still finding it hard to find a job. And the competition in there, it's really like tight. But when I'm moving here to the more remote area, which is working in tourism, I find it another challenge, and that's make me worry. Where I noticed that a lot of businesses and also like industry companies are now kind of looking at a different approach in the way they are, how can I say, get the employee. So before, when they open up for a job, usually it's become a full-time worker. And now they only open up for either short time or commonly here it's called daily workers. And that's, well, I do understand that business want efficiency and they want to keep their costs low. But somehow I feel like that's gonna create another problem, which is uncertainty and instability for us to get a decent job.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think that is something that really a concern for me currently.
Yeah, I hear you, Sintya. That's the storyline. Okay, it makes me happy in a way. So I'm very sad for the situation, happy in a way, because it confirms that we are telling the story right in the ILO. Our story very much that the job used to have all of the characteristics within it that would allow you to grow as a person and move into your next step as an adult. This job has become more a gig now. So it's just a current income generator, but it doesn't bring the benefits. It doesn't allow you to have the security to move to that next stage. So it's, thank you for speaking your truth. And sorry, I'm speeding up a little bit. Let's go to me. I'm guessing you've had to jump through a lot of extra hurdles as a migrant and as a young woman, a migrant in your country. Am I wrong? And do you feel that this impacted your choices and opportunities at school and as you entered the labor market?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. There's you can't really get away from those facts that I was a migrant child and I'm a woman, and I was a minority in my country. I was lucky in the sense that, Australia is relatively egalitarian. When I first went to Australia, there wasn't that many migrant children. I was put into an English class with Vietnamese kids on the assumption that obviously we could speak to each other. We could not, but so slight issues there. But in many ways, I was in Australia sort of just before I had to find a high school. And I didn't speak enough English to get in the Australian system called a selective high school, which is an academically strong high school. And I played enough piano at the time to be offered scholarships to private schools, but I was rejected on the basis, and I quote, she will never catch up in English. Me being me, I went on to do a PhD in English because I was annoyed. And actually within about 2 years, I won the competition in English. So I caught up very, very fast. But what it did was it closed doors to certain kind of educational pathways, but actually it opened doors to others. So my first high school was actually a music school. I went to the Conservatorium of Music High School because they didn't care that I didn't speak English. And so because I was there, I learned, I did a lot of music. I played piano, I played violin. I had an amazing musical education. And then sort of halfway through the high school career, I went back into sort of the selective school system because by then I'd caught up essentially. That obviously had, links to my PhD choices. It also, so it just, it's one of the things where, yes, things definitely were closed to me and made very clear to me that they were closed to me, but other things opened up and you made the best you could of the opportunities you were given.
Amazing. But you, of course, had the strength of character to overcome a lot of the obstacles. And
I just didn't really know. Yeah, I didn't know there were obstacles. It was just the reality, and you just moved on.
That's very true. It's the nature of being young. It's us old comers who identify them as obstacles. When you're young, you're getting through it. So. But let's see what our audience says about obstacles. We're going to put up another poll. We're going to put up another poll. I was going to speak further. Maybe we skip it. Let's skip it. We're running out of time. Let's skip it. I'm going to stick with our panelists, and sorry, audience, we're going to skip the poll. It was about the obstacles that you might face in the labor markets, but we can catch that later, or you can speak to that orally in the Q&A. So let me go back to Sintya and ask one last question, Sintya, this is about what your perspective of the types of supports and interventions that we as international community or governments can do to better support young people to have a smoother and more productive transition to the working life.
I think I will start with my belief, and I always believe that everyone has potential. It's not about their lack of skill or lack of intelligence that they couldn't have the distant work, but it's often that the limitation that they face during the time that want to pursue whatever that they want to have, especially the distant work. And I just feel like a lot of our government or even organization are focusing on creating a lot of job fair or creating new company or new industry to boost the employment. But yes, I see it as a valuable catalyst, but I feel like the true key to facing this and to to tackle these issues by developing the high quality human resources like the human itself. And that is why I really love to hear more when people, the government, the organization, NGO, anyone who has the capacity to invest more in youth. And that's really important for me. And for example, like I really love the program that created by Plan, which is where now I'm here. So on that time, I joined a program by Plan Indonesia. It's called Ready to Work, which they are kind of developing the education, the training, and employment in the way with the entrepreneurship that give more access, especially the inclusiveness to all generation and to all people regardless their where they live, their location. And it's feel like if we can continue to strengthen this network, especially with the young entrepreneurs, it is so essential to foster more creativity, opportunities that we can improve more employment and entrepreneurship that can, especially for me, Gen Z, it's really resonate me deeply. And when this program and the policy are established, we really need, the effective implementation, especially by the local government, because local government are working closely with the community, the grassroots community. And this approach, this program is really need to be executed very well for us to be able to spread the impact and get more people can be affected. And partnership like the NGO organization like ILO especially could help to expand this initiative that can make more, meaningful impact for the sustainable, unsustainable, and also for us to become more independent to pursue our future.
Exactly. So, okay, great. So I think it's absolutely right. The youth engagement, helping young people to understand their pathways, understand their rights, understand the tools that they have to work with. Even if we know it might not be an easy ride, but at least we're giving them everything that they can to work with. And let me turn it over to you for the last question. And I just want to ask if we've missed anything. And maybe if we could wave them or use our Gen X hats as the older person, what sort of advice would we give? Would you give to a young person who's starting out these days?
Yeah, I do think the one big difference I think between my generation and Gen Z is I think access to education and training opportunities are harder. I was lucky enough to go into tertiary education at a time where it was not unaffordable, right? Like a migrant kid could get into university, could complete it without bankruptcy or taking out student loans in an unreasonable way. So, and I had scholarship funds that I could draw on, all sorts of things. So I do think that that's a big change I see globally as well. I think, I think generational advice is a very fraught thing. I think it's hard to, I don't really know the realities of Gen Z, life now. But I think, it's a very inspiring and exciting time. I think Gen Zs have, with technology and with their use of technology, and, as much as we sort of, there are lots of downsides to gig culture, there's also, I think, that freedom of, different kinds of jobs, which, there are jobs now that I didn't know existed and would not have imagined 20 years ago, right? Like I just didn't know. And so I think there's new opportunities, which are really exciting. And I hope that they embrace that with passion and fun, you know, and enjoy that time and have confidence to try new things, but also the maybe the wisdom to learn stuff from other generations as well.
Oh my gosh, I can't top that. So well done. Me. Yes, this competition in the realm of education is becoming outlandish, but maybe at the same time we can say it's a bit balanced out by online learning. So young people have the opportunity to learn themselves if they have that curiosity and to do so. And yeah, I'm going to be quiet. So we have little time left. I'm so sorry about that. But if anybody in the audience listening in would like to raise their hands and just speak to their own experience or respond to anything that our speakers have said, anything that you've heard, please raise your hand and you will be unmuted. Very, very little time. But we have an active chat going on in the meantime. Let me ask Joanna if anyone is raising their hands. I guess they are not. So let me respond to one of the questions that was posted in the chat. Green skills. I mean, this is one that comes up again and again and again. Yes, we recognize the importance of green skills. It's not going to be the answer to all of the world's problems, but it's important that young people are given the knowledge also to work in the realm of knowing how to combat the injustices of climate change and working towards the solution. So yeah, we will always support green skills. And maybe Sintya, in your resort area, are you doing anything in the realm of conservation and greening?
Yes, definitely. So besides working as the activities manager, I also tackle the education initiative here with this community in East Bali. So this village called Manggis Village. Manggis is known in Indonesian word is mangosteen. So it's mangosteen village. So currently I open up a learning center where I hosted 102 students to come here. They not only just learn English, but they also learn essential skill. Like we really, every time we have the class, we always share the environmental awareness to the student, especially with the youngest student. And we do it with the drama and all those things. But also we do have training for the local women here, because here in this village, the young marriage rate is very high. So for 21 years old woman, she already have her third kids. So you can imagine how old she start when she was married at the first time. And then we give them training, especially utilizing the natural resources that available in this village, especially the coconut. Then we created the product that they can supply to the resort here. And we also have the training for the men, which is we are supporting them converting from unorganic farming. Now they are certified as the organic rice field farmers. So that's all the kind of initiative that we do here also.
Okay, wonderful. All right, ladies and gentlemen, I really feel like we're running out of time. We could continue the conversation endlessly, but one of the takeaways that I have is that I mean, we know that when it comes to creating opportunities and keeping hope alive for young people, we have to attack it on all levels. So keeping young people hopeful, that's work that we in the realm of international organizations can do through providing tools, making sure they have the tools for whatever opportunity comes up. I just saw a report coming out of the World Economic Forum that 80% of the jobs in 20 years will be unpredictable. We won't know what they are. There'll be occupations that we have never heard of yet. So you can't guess and you can't prepare for that. How does an education system help a young person prepare for an occupation that doesn't exist yet? It's about the soft skills. It's about helping them to think critically and to have green skills and digital skills. So building up their confidence and their hope and their technically skilled and confident self-esteem skills. So I think that's where we will be heading, while at the same time helping governments to make the most of their economic potential, transforming their macroeconomic frameworks to be as job rich as possible. So it's a very heavy burden that we all have ahead of us, but I think we will. I'm going to close the conversation today, but there's a few important things I need to say. First of all, a huge thanks to YouthForesight, which is the platform that we've made use of today. The YouthForesight is a platform that's hosted by a partnership that includes the Decent Jobs for Youth Initiative and Gen Youth. So we're very grateful for them to hosting us. I'm hugely grateful to Joanna and Gladys behind the scenes. Thank you for joining us on the series. The series will continue we'll bring it to other regions, and we will be doing a hybrid event in Geneva on the December 5th with the TASC Platform. So that will be exciting. We'll cover Europe and Middle East, but the next online forum will be for Sub-Saharan Africa. Now, you have in the link, I believe, a link to a few questions where we'll ask you to provide your feedback on the event. Just please let us know whether or not you feel this is valuable or whether or not we've gotten it right. So we'd love to hear from you now or also in the future. And I'll give you all a few seconds to respond to the poll. Thank you so much, Sintya. Thank you so much, Me. As I say, you were so brave in sharing your experiences and trying to speak for an entire generation. But I think you did a really stellar job. Maybe, Joanna, you would also like to put the link to the event page where the recording will be posted. You can place that in the chat. Okay. Thank you so much, everyone. I'm going to close this first intergenerational dialogue. Thank you to all of you for your engagement, and we look forward to seeing you in the future. Okay. Bye-bye.